Hello, hello, hello. So what I want to show you today is this puffin painting that I finally did. I've been wanting to paint a puffin since I went to Iceland last year, but I didn't see any puffins in Iceland, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to find a good picture, find another picture that somebody else took, and I'm going to paint it because I didn't get to take any of my own personal pictures, but I got to take some in Montreal, which you can, if you click here, you can see all about it. And it was a fabulous experience to get to see puffins in person. They are as adorable as you would think. And they're really interesting in how they behave. They have like really funny ways that they swim.
I don't know if that's swimming or what. That's what I was thinking.
Hi everyone, je vais commencer une présentation bilingue sur les manchots.
This guy's gonna jump. This guy's gonna jump. He's thinking about it. He's thinking about it. Tentatively. Woo!
So anyways, did this puffin painting, and I'm going to show you that now.
The sketching process was fun. I love the way that their eyes are shaped. And here's me making the feet potentially too small. We'll talk more about that later. I completely forgot to record the beginning. Well, it's not like I actually forgot. It's just that I pushed record and then it failed. So what happened while I was not recording and I thought it was recording was that I used a very thin wash and it looks a lot like watercolor. You can see blooms on the puffin's back and on the stomach. Blooms happen when you add thinner paint to thicker paint on the paper. And it's going to get completely covered up by the other layers that I put on. I really like blooms, but I don't have a lot of control over them. Some watercolor artists do have a lot of control over them, and they incorporate them into their paintings. That's not really relevant, though, for today's painting, because today's painting is gouache. And when you do use gouache, you usually use thick layers that would never let you see a bloom. So this painting is very experimental. I say that like all of my paintings aren't experimental, but this particular one, like I really haven't used gouache that much, so it really is. And I'm working on the tea to butter consistency. I've mentioned that in my other gouache videos. I think it was my learning gouache while I was painting a bug over and over. So right here I'm experimenting with using the texture of the brush to create feather-like strokes. And you'll see that I will cover that up later because I wasn't super impressed with it, with how it looked. One thing I prefer with gouache over watercolor is getting to ignore the preserving of the whites and just use white and mix it with gray or whatever and make something like semi-white. I love that. It's so much easier for me to not have to think like that, although I do end up preserving my whites a lot because I am used to it. One of the things that I'm not used to is blending. So when I'm doing a solid color like this, all black, it's not much of a problem. But here, where I'm trying to dilute the edges and have them blend, it's a little bit more complicated. I feel like I'm getting a better hang of it, but there's a lot of sharp edges, as you can see on the cheek. Despite my best efforts, there isn't a particularly even gradient. I think that could be referred to as painterly, but because I'm used to doing things as realistically as possible, maybe I'm just a little bit prejudiced against it. I don't know. So here I'm trying to also have an even gradient with the wings. I'm going to be blending the white marks that I've made and trying to create a gray. And I'm experimenting here because I don't really have a set process of doing this in gouache yet. I'm not used to how you would do it. Here, I'm covering up the feathers first, though. The feather marks that I made that I ended up not liking. I guess I'm trying to think if I keep any. I don't think I do. I try to keep it a little bit thicker, and I guess that would be a lot more painterly because realistically, you could probably see their feathers if you zoom in enough. However, I'm not super zoomed in. This is not a humongous painting. The puffin is, how big were the puffins? Yeah, I mean, I'm painting it smaller than the puffin was. So to get that level of detail would be unrealistic. And that's actually something that I've struggled with in the past, is trying to include too much detail in a too small of a painting and not realizing that was the source of my frustration. So up here, I'm having an easier time blending. Oh, this part was my favorite. I loved putting in the shadow under the beak. I loved having a chance to like pop in some red after using mostly like, black and white. So getting to do the red was fun. And then right here where I'm putting in the darker tones underneath, I really enjoyed that. One of the things that intrigues me about puffins is how their faces already look shaded. I don't know how else to describe it, but they have, you know, how do you explain it? Their faces have gray markings on them, and the gray is done in a way that there's a brightness just around the eyes, and then it's darker at the bottom, like the same way if you were like shading a ball in like an introductory drawing class. Their faces look like these shaded balls to me. And along with their really unique eye shape and the way they move, I just find them super intriguing. Although until I saw them in person at the Montreal Dome. No, it was a sphere, Biosphere. Until I saw them in person, I did not realize that they had such a unique way of moving, because I have only seen them from really far away. Like I did see them in Iceland, but they were really far and my eyesight is not phenomenal. I decided to recheck the size of the feet compared to the head, because it just felt like maybe I got it wrong in the original sketch. I'm still not really sure if I got it correct. Maybe their feet are really, really tiny compared to their heads. Or maybe it's the perspective, like maybe I took the photo from a certain angle. I'm not really certain what happened, but their feet just seemed really small by the time I was finishing up my painting. So I feel like I'm getting the hang of blending a little bit more here. I feel like it's painterly, which is cool. I'm glad that I'm being able to do that, because a lot of times I just feel like I'm like it's like my brain and my hand want to just copy and paste, and I just try to make whatever I'm drawing look exactly like the original. And if I really wanted to do that, I could just post all the pictures that I take instead of trying to, kind of put on my own perspective or my own vision, or like, I guess, how you see things. I think that's the cool thing about, photography. You can definitely share your vision of the world. But when you're painting, I think you have even more flexibility in how you can change and adapt your subject to really highlight the things that you care about. So I'm highlighting the face of this animal. I think that's a really, really common thing to do. I think that most people who paint wildlife want the humans that are seeing their wildlife paintings to identify with the animal and to see the humanity of the animal, if that makes any sense. And one way to do that is to really focus on the eyes and facial expressions. If the animal is making any, puffins look kind of cheerful. So maybe that's the other reason why humans are drawn to them. I tried to keep most of the details in the face and keep the rest of the painting less detailed. That was hard for me because I really love adding in the details. So, it's kind of a matter of self-control to make myself stop when I feel that I have added enough details to the face. I left the feet pretty undetailed, although I could have added a lot. You could make every single feather stand out. Could have added more to the background, if you could call the green stuff under its feet the background.
So thank you for joining me on this puffin painting journey. This will not be the last puffin I paint. I'm going to use some of the photographs that I took in my Iceland journal, which I still have not done very much of. And I will also be painting more puffins on big sheets of paper. This was like the most fun I have had painting in a really long time, but thank you for joining me while I painted my puffin, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.